Hey everyone, happy Monday. So Tara, we were right. We called it RFK Jr. I wanted to call him like RFKJ, Bobby, RFK Jr. He's got so many names, but he is suspending his campaign and teaming up with Trump. I gotta say, I'm so excited because I was just waiting for like one of those Nikki Haley moves where you get all the press in one room and then you basically say nothing. But no, like he followed through and he is teaming up with Trump. He announced it on Friday after we had published our podcast episode. And I think this was the best political speech in modern history. I mean, I listened to it and I felt so much hope. Like I've been in such a good mood ever since I listened to it.
Yeah, it was an incredibly inspiring speech. And when I started listening, it was already like, I don't know, 9:30 at night or something like that. But I stayed up to watch the whole thing because I was completely captivated.
Yeah, I've listened to it a couple of times now just because I mean there was a lot of information that he put in there. But overall I felt like it was a uniting message. And I think every American can agree on the things that he said regardless of political party because like the two main things that I feel like he spent the most time talking about was the never-ending wars and then addressing the health epidemic. And you don't realize it because I don't know, we just get caught up in all this other stuff, but that's probably this country's number one issue because it's killing more people than anything else, but we don't talk about it because no one's talking about it. Like no politicians are addressing it. And so it was great to see someone actually calling it out and bringing the facts.
Yeah, it's funny because this is something you and I have talked about a lot actually in past episodes, especially when we first started the podcast. But, over the last couple years, it's just been all this crazy shit, right? With Biden and the border crisis and the war in Ukraine and the weaponizing of government agencies and the censorship, misinformation, disinformation narrative, the witch hunt against Trump, inflation, and like now this unprecedented rise of an unelected presidential candidate, right? We have been so distracted with all this other shit that we really haven't talked about anything else. And even though all these issues are absolutely critical and they need to be addressed and talked about, so does our country's health epidemic. So I was really excited to hear such passionate focus on this from RFK Jr. I think he talked about it for what, like 15 minutes at least.
Mhm.
And you're right, like it's something else. It's something that like nobody else is addressing.
Yeah. And I think everyone should go and listen to the full speech. But I do want to play quite a few clips today just because there were so many moments where I was like, I wish every single American could hear this. So I picked kind of like what I thought were the best parts of the speech, but I want to start with his introduction because this is where he really does a good job of explaining what the modern day Democrat Party has become. So listen to this.
16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the
Okay. So I wanted to play that part because I feel like he does such a good job of explaining that like everything they stood for when his uncle was president, everything that was of value to the Democrats at that time, they have now flipped and they're the opposite of. Like it
Yeah.
used to be the, anti-war party. Now it's the pro-war. It used to be the free speech party. Now it's censorship. Like literally every value they have completely flipped on. Don't you think?
Yeah, 100%.
It's crazy. So I want to play another clip because he flat out calls out like how his entire campaign has pretty much been boycotted on every major news network. And I love how he just like calls them all out on it. So listen to this clip.
Outright coerces media companies to censor political speech. It's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression. And that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest. President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot. But here in America, the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks expose themselves as Democratic Party organs. Over the course of more than a year in a campaign where my poll numbers reached at times in the high 20s, the DNC-aligned mainstream media networks maintain a near perfect embargo on interviews with me. During his 10-month presidential campaign in 1992, Ross Perot gave 34 interviews on mainstream networks. In contrast, during the 16 months since I declared, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN combined gave only 2 live interviews from me. Those networks instead ran a continuous deluge of hit pieces with inaccurate, often vile, pejoratives and defamatory smears. Some of those same networks and colluded with the DNC to keep me off the debate stage. Representatives of those networks are in this room right now, and I'll just take a moment to ask you to consider the many ways that your institutions have abdicated this really sacred responsibility, the duty of a free press to safeguard democracy and to challenge always the party in power. Instead of maintaining that posture of fierce skepticism toward authority, your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power.
He calls them right out to their faces.
But he does it so eloquently. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't like a hate, anger-filled speech, It was
Yep.
just, I'm telling, this is how it is. He's pointing it out. And like, I honestly think that everything that happened with his campaign was kind of a turning point for a lot of the moderate Democrats who started leaning more independent after seeing what happened to him with this very blatant level of censorship. And like, essentially, they've just forced him out of the Democrat Party by not allowing him to run as a Democrat candidate. And I was thinking about this, like, from a psychological standpoint. A lot of people can rationalize to themselves why it's okay to censor Trump and go after Trump because they've been brainwashed to hate him for so long. And he's technically like, the opposition. But with RFK Jr., it was a bit of a different story because he wanted to represent the Democrat Party and run as a Democrat candidate. And they literally wouldn't let him do it, which is completely fucking unconstitutional. And I think that what happened with him started to open a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad he brought up the thing with Putin because like how can we sit there and talk about these other countries that are doing this, political warfare but then completely ignore it in our own country. So I love that he used that example, but it's interesting because you had messaged me and said like okay, he's dropping out, go like tune in or whatever. So I pulled up the live interview on X and I'm messaging my mom. Well, she doesn't have X. So she's like, okay, I'm going to try to find it. And she messaged me. She's like, ABC News is actually airing it live. Like, I'm really surprised. And I was like, oh, good. Right when they got to that clip that I was just playing for you, she's like, oh my God. She said the news anchor immediately jumped in. They cut off the live feed and they basically were like, saying that this is like misinformation and they cut the speech. And she's like, if this isn't proof of censorship and propaganda, then I don't know what is. And what's crazy is like, I think I've brought this up before, but you have my dad who only watches ABC Nightly News. That's like the only place he gets his information from. He's not on social media, doesn't listen to podcasts. He literally does not know who RFK Jr. is. He doesn't
Wow.
know. He didn't even know that there was another guy running, and he would love him. Like everything that RFK says is so aligned with his values. No idea who he even is. And that's because he watches ABC News, the mainstream news, not even letting people know that there's another option out there. Like it's just freaking insane. So, before we get into like the meat of the whole live stream, I want to play one more clip where I think he does a really good job of highlighting what he calls the warfare of the DNC.
The DNC waged continual legal warfare against both President Trump and myself. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor. Vice President Harris has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days. This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people to choose when they don't know whom they are choosing? And how can this look to the rest of the world? My father and my uncle were always conscious of America's image abroad because of our nation's role as the template for democracy, the role model for democratic processes, and the leader of the free world. Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weaponization of the federal agencies.
It's like literally everything we talk about on this podcast, and
Yeah.
he puts it out there like a lifelong Democrat just puts
Yeah.
it out there. And like, so he was saying, now it's like 35 days that Kamala hasn't given an interview or anything. What I didn't realize, because I couldn't sit through the entire speech for the DNC. Her speech was only 28 minutes. So like you have Trump at the RNC that like talked for like 2 hours. Kamala's speech was 28 minutes. That's all we've gotten out of this whole thing. No interviews, no debates, no nothing. And he's freaking calling it out and saying, this is the party that's supposed to stand for democracy. She wasn't voted in, but what has she done to earn the vote? Nothing. Nothing but smoke and mirrors.
And I like how he pointed out that the Democrats technically chose a candidate that no one has ever actually heard from.
Yeah.
On in an interview that
Mhm.
nobody knows what her stance or her policy is on everything. Like, how much fucking clearer does it need to be to the American public what a fucking sham this whole thing is?
Exactly. It's like anyone that's paying attention can see it. So now it's pretty much the people that are paying attention to things and the people that just are ignoring it. And, like my dad going off ABC News, what they say
Mhm.
at 6:30 at night.
Yeah. I want to say too, like Fox News, every single day they put out an updated article, like saying, okay, it is now 36 days since we haven't heard from Kamala.
I love it. And you would think at this point, with so many people calling that out, that she would finally be like, okay, I've got to do something. But no, because they know they can do the basement strategy at one Biden, the presidency,
Well,
right?
it is August 26th today. And remember, she said she was going to try to set up an interview by the end of the month. Well, you only have a few days left to go to make that happen. And I'm
Yeah.
not placing bets on it occurring at all.
And now that this celebration of the DNC is over, I think we're going to see it heating up. And this mainstream media, like, I get that they're being paid and they're given a script, but it's like they've got to be pissed that they're getting nothing. They're getting no airtime from the leading presidential nominee. Well, she's not leading, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
she's not doing anything for them. So it's just crazy. Um, so I want to get into like the actual issues that him and Trump are aligned on. So I'm going to play a clip. It's a long clip, but it's really important because it goes into detail of like why he's joining forces with Trump and what specific issues they see eye to eye on.
We pushed Russia into a disastrous alliance with China and Iran. We're closer to the brink of nuclear exchange than at any time since 1962. And the neocons in the White House don't seem to care at all. Our moral authority and our economy are in shambles. And the war gave rise to the emergence of BRICS, which now threatens to replace the dollar as the global reserve currency. This is a first-class calamity for our country. Judging by her bellicose, belligerent speech last night in Chicago, we can assume that President Harris will be an enthusiastic advocate for this and other neocon military adventures. And President Trump says that he will reopen negotiations with President Putin and end the war overnight as soon as he becomes president. This alone would justify my support for his campaign. Last summer, it looked like no candidate was willing to negotiate a quick end to the Ukraine war, to tackle chronic disease epidemic, to protect free speech, our constitutional freedoms, to clean corporate influence out of our government, or to defy the neocons and their agenda of endless military adventurism. But now one of the two candidates has adopted these issues as his own, to the point where he has asked to enlist me in his administration. I'm speaking, of course, of Donald Trump. Less than 2 hours after President Trump narrowly escaped assassination, Callie Means called me on my cell phone. I was then in Las Vegas. Callie is arguably the leading advocate for food safety, for soil regeneration, and for ending the chronic disease epidemic that is destroying America's health and ruining our economy. Callie has exposed the insidious corruption at the FDA, the NIH, the HHS, and the USDA that has caused the epidemic. Callie had been working on and off for my campaign, advising me on those subjects since the beginning. And those subjects have been my primary focus for the last 20 years. I was delighted when Callie told me that day that he had also been advising President Trump. He told me President Trump was anxious to talk to me about chronic disease and other subjects and to explore avenues of cooperation. He asked if I would take a call from the president. President Trump telephoned me a few minutes later, and I met with him the following day. A few weeks later, I met again with President Trump and his family members and closest advisors in Florida. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals. That arrangement would allow us to disagree publicly and privately and fiercely, if need be, on issues over which we differ. while working together on the existential issues upon which we are in concordance. I was a ferocious critic of many of the policies during his first administration, and there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. We are aligned with each other on other key issues like ending the forever wars, ending the childhood disease epidemics, securing the border, protecting freedom of speech, unraveling the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies, getting the US intelligence agencies out of the business of propagandizing and censoring and surveilling Americans and interfering with our elections.
All right, Tara, I got to ask you because we talked about this last week and I was saying, like I played that clip of the pro-Palestinian protester that was like basically saying she'd vote for Trump over Kamala. And here, he's flat out saying, we don't want war. I don't want war. Trump doesn't want war. Trump is saying he will end it in a day. I really think they could capture this huge portion of the Democrat Party that is pro-Palestinian and wants all the war to end. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I think it's a big opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on this. And I want to talk a little bit about how this can help the Trump campaign because RFK Jr. is now the third high-profile traditional Democrat that is now on Trump's team. And first we had Elon Musk, then Tulsi Gabbard, who's helping him prep for the upcoming debate with Kamala and who will hopefully bring in more female voters, and now RFK Jr., right? And all three of these people have exchanged horrible words against each other with Trump, right? I mean, none of them make any secret of it. And RFK has been very outspoken about the things he doesn't like about Trump, and Trump has done the same. And yet here they're coming together, right? And it's like, if you look at Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, and now RFK Jr., this is like a powerful trifecta of Democrats, right?
I
And
love that, the powerful trifecta.
It is because what they're doing is they're showing America that it's okay to leave the Democrat Party because the Democrat Party left them. And I was reading this article in Just the News that quoted one of Trump's senior advisors that called them like a trio of Power Rangers. And even like former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, he was on the John Solomon Reports podcast, and he was saying like he thinks Trump should like package Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. together because they're both like former Democrat witnesses about the corruption of the system, and that the two of them together would be like devastating, like in a good way, you know? And he also said that he thinks RFK Jr. will appeal to younger voters. And he talked about how, like, when he defected from the Democrat Party and ran as an independent, it had an effect on young people because he comes from this long line of famous Democrats. And now he's being outspoken about, what the Democrat Party has turned into. And this sentiment about how the Democrat Party has left traditional Democrats was also echoed by RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, who was also on the John Solomon Report. And he said RFK's decision to join forces with Trump is important in the sense that not only is it showing that other rational traditional Democrats, like, hey, it's okay for you to leave what has become a completely radicalized political party, but it's also showing that the Republican Party, he called it like they're becoming a big tent of the GOP. And he said, Trump's willing to work with anyone who wants to make America great again. And he's willing to sit down with these non-traditional platforms and meet with non-traditional groups. And that's exactly what's happening. And even before RFK made this announcement on Friday, Tulsi Gabbard spoke out about how his supporters are independent-minded people who value freedom. And she said, like, we're going to have to make this case to his supporters about the very clear contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, because Kamala is standing for taking away our freedom and increasingly tyrannical government and war, whereas Trump is standing for peace, prosperity, and freedom. And so with RFK joining forces with Trump, we're seeing something so unique. And like, we talk about this all the time. It's no longer about Democrat versus Republican. It's about the American people coming together and standing up to tyranny. And that's what I'm seeing in this like joining of Trump and RFK Jr. And in that clip, he was talking about how he's been in contact with Trump ever since his assassination attempt. And, Trump suggesting they join forces as a unity party. And I fucking love that because it's not Republican or Democrat, but it's a unity party where people can disagree on things, but still work together to better America. And like, isn't that what our fucking government should be?
Yeah. Oh my God. I have so much I want to say about this topic because, first of all, it's really ironic that so many Democrats and left-leaning people hate Trump more than they've ever hated a politician because he has actually brought the Republican Party more to the center than it's ever been. I mean, he's
Yes.
anti-war. He is pro-gay marriage and gay rights. He is pro like middle class, getting the middle class booming. Like all of these things that used to be Democratic values, and so it's funny because it just goes along with what we've been saying that the left has lost their values and they're just being brainwashed and conditioned to hate someone based on emotions. But what's really interesting, so my husband and I were like debating about this when we heard the speech because RFK, he isn't dropping out of the race. Okay. So it's very strategic what he's doing. And I think it presents a really good opportunity for our country since the Democrat Party is completely like the establishment party now. The way he's doing things is he is suspending his campaign in all of the swing states. So he will not be on the ballot in the swing states. Now, this is important because ever since Biden dropped out and Kamala took over in the swing states, Trump has seen like a 1 to 2% negative impact, while RFK has seen like a 5% bump. So if he goes off of the ballot, Trump will likely get that 5% and it'll be like a landslide victory. RFK's staying on the ballot in the non-swing states. And the reason for that is because if they get 5%, if he gets 5% of the total vote, then next election, there can be a three-party um, thing running. Like it could be a legitimate, like, third party going against the Democrats and the Republicans where there's actually a chance of winning. And I think this is huge. And I think if someone like RFK ran after Trump's done, I would vote for him.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the party of common sense, of middle ground. So it's really strategic what they're doing. And like you said, they are calling this the unity party. They want to unite. They want to cross these boundaries of left and right, Democrat, Republican. And so you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard on board. Well, and Elon Musk. People on TikTok are saying Trump's building his Avengers team because you've got Elon that's going to take on all the government spending. You've got RFK that's going to handle the health epidemic. I don't know what Tulsi's job will be, but I'm guessing it'll be going after the military industrial complex. And they're all actively helping Trump. They're actively going on podcasts, on social media every day. The other person I want to mention that I think it was Brett Weinstein that brought this up is Joe Rogan, right? So Joe Rogan, Dave Smith, like that whole group of guys, their whole life, they've always been considered like liberal, very liberal. They've all changed to where their values haven't changed, but they're like, Trump's the only guy that's like aligning with our values. So, and I think it was Brett Weinstein, I don't want to like misspeak, but on a podcast I was listening to, they said it is expected, the rumor mills have started that Joe Rogan's having Donald Trump on the weekend before election, the very last week in October. And that, I mean, that will be the biggest podcast episode anyone has ever had. You think
Yeah.
about how he got 1 billion people tuning in with Elon Musk. Just imagine Joe Rogan's show. Like that is the show. People have been waiting freaking like 8 years for this to happen. Every
Yeah.
guest has asked him, when are you going to have Trump on? And the rumor is like, it's not confirmed, but the rumor is it's going to be end of October. And it's like, that'll be a shoo-in. Like, it's just, there is this like amazing team of incredible people that everybody loves that he is building. And what does Kamala have? Tim Waltz that's fucking creepy, according to Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have sorry to like veer off topic, but since you mentioned that, every time Tucker talks about how Tim Walz reminds him of like one of the, like, what do you call them? The at his boys, his school that he went to, his
Like the
boarding school.
creepers, like the
Yeah.
pedophiles.
Yeah, they're like the
Yeah.
hall monitors or whatever they are
Hmm.
at the boarding school. He gets
Yeah.
this serious tone to his voice and he's like, no, there's something wrong with him.
No, seriously though, he's like, I'm not even kidding. He's like,
Yeah.
absolutely 100%. Like, I have
Yeah.
no evidence, but I can tell you that guy is not a good person.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all feel it. And it's like, you might not, I mean, we have a lot of evidence against him, but yeah, something ain't right with that guy, but something's not right with Kamala either. So it's like
Yeah.
they go hand in hand. That's the team she's building. And this is the team that Trump's building. And at least he's trying to unite. Like
Yeah.
he's trying to bring everyone together. It's not like the Kamala Biden administration where they hate half the country. They hate these MAGA extremists and want us all arrested, you know? Um, all right. Well, I want to switch gears for a second because another big part of the speech was about the health epidemic in the country. Now, he mentioned Callie Means. So I didn't realize this, but Callie worked on RFK's campaign and him and his sister, I always get them mixed up because the sister's Casey, the
Yes, I
guy's
thought the
Callie, and I
sister
always
was
flip.
Callie. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Kelly
Yeah.
just seems like more whatever.
Girl's
So
name?
they
No.
did a Tucker Carlson interview, and everyone should go listen to that whole thing because it's super eye-opening. As someone that worked for Big Pharma and the biggest beverage company in the world, I can say like, thank God someone's finally bringing this to light because all of it. It's so true, and they give so many facts and statistics that you cannot deny. So go listen to that episode. It was on Tucker Carlson if you haven't yet. I'm gonna play just a small clip. It was like a 2-hour interview, but I'm gonna play a small clip where Casey Means lists a ton of absolutely startling statistics that, again, no one in our government seems to be addressing. So let me play that real quick.
The word I used earlier, destroyed, is not hyperbolic in any way, shape, or form. 74% of American adults now are overweight or obese. Close to 50% of children are overweight or obese. 120 years ago, when someone was obese, there were case reports written about it. Yes. Literally, there were people in the circus if you had obesity. Sideshow fat. Yeah, it was so unusual. It was so unusual. It is now 74% of our country. 77% of young adults are unfit to serve in the military because of these issues like obesity. Now let's talk about diabetes. 50%. A full 50% of American adults have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, which is a fundamental issue in how our cells. Half the country, Tucker, have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, and 30% of teens now have prediabetes. This was a condition that no pediatrician would have seen in their lifetime 50 years ago. 1% of Americans in 1950 had type 2 diabetes. We have 18% of teens with fatty liver disease, a disease that used to be in late stage alcoholics. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the elderly. Young adult cancers are up 79%. And this is the first year in American history we're estimated to have over 2 million cases of cancer. 25% of American women are on an antidepressant medication. 40% of 18-year-olds have a mental health diagnosis. We have the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the entire developed world, despite spending 2x on infant and maternal care than any other country. So you have a higher risk of dying as a woman giving birth in America than any other developed country in the world. Autism rates in kids are 1 in 36 nationally. This was 1 in 1,500 in the year 2000, and the screening has not changed in California, where I live.
And I just want to linger on that. And the screening has not changed. So
in 20 years,
the definition hasn't changed.
No, 1 in 32 from 1 in 1,500 in California. 1 in 36 right now. It was 1 in 1,500. In California, it's 1 in 22. One of the worst states in the country for autism. So this is just a smattering.
What the hell is that?
And all of these conditions. I mean, and I could go on and on. Autoimmune diseases, infertility is at peak rates. I mean, I don't know how this is not front page news. Infertility is going up 1% per year. Sperm counts are going down 1% per year since the 1970s. Sperm counts are down.
Continuing to
50%,
drop?
Continuing to drop.
At an increasing rate. Our bodies are crying out for help.
26% of women have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now, the thing that people need to understand is that all of these conditions are caused or driven by the exact same thing, which is metabolic dysfunction, this core foundational issue of how our bodies on the cellular level function, which is driven by our toxic food system and our toxic environment. These subtle, insidious forces that are creating slow, progressive illness starting now in fetal life that allow patients to be profitable and on the pharma treadmill for their entire lives. They make us sick, but they don't kill us. And then we are drugged for life. You look at what's happening.
So the reason I wanted to play that clip is because everything that she just rattled off, RFK brought up throughout his speech. She just condensed it. And like I said, I mean, I used to work for these companies, and I mean, there is so much truth to what they're saying. My biggest job, my whole entire job for 2 years was to get school districts to purchase soda. And we would give them anywhere from $10K to $100,000 to be exclusive in that school because we knew we would have a lifelong customer if we could get kids young enough. Like so many things that were just absolutely wrong. And I just want to dive into like one other thing really quick is that in that 2-hour interview with Tucker Carlson, and then RFK talks about this, like we're all led to believe like, oh, if you're obese or you have diabetes, it's because you have no willpower, you're lazy, you don't work out, you don't eat right. But what they go into detail in the interview is that these processed foods are literally chemically engineered to be addictive, to mess with our metabolic system so that we're never full and we're constantly hungry. And it's like literally changing our biology. It's messing with our cells, our hormones, everything, to where like you could have all the willpower in the world and still have these issues when your hormones are being changed because of all the chemicals in these products. And RFK, like he's built his career on going after these companies. He has sued the EPA. He's gone after food companies and pharma. So like what better guy to team up with Trump for that, you know?
Yeah, in regards to that interview Tucker did, it was so eye-opening for me to the point that I like as I was listening to the podcast, I went on Amazon to order their book. And then they also
Mhm.
mentioned this like Alzheimer's prevention book that they talked about, and I ordered that one too. But it's like the health stats for Americans, they are fucking alarming. And like not only are we the most obese nation in the world with some of the highest incidence of chronic disease, but we also have a severe mental health crisis. And there was a report that was just released last month. It's called the Mental Health in America Report. And it indicates that nearly 60 million adults, which is over 23% of the American population, has experienced mental illness in the past year. And nearly 13 million adults reported serious thoughts of suicide. And one of the other things RFK was talking about was the cost of our health crisis, right? And he was saying that our government health spending is almost all for chronic disease. And then it's like totaled $4.5 trillion according to the CDC. And like in comparison, 2 trillion was dedicated to our defense budget this year. So like our money is all being spent on chronic disease. And let's be honest here, our healthcare system fucking sucks. It is not designed for wellness. It's designed to keep people sick and dependent on big pharma for survival. And most Americans don't even realize it because it's like you were just saying, we've become so conditioned to accept the foods that we're eating and rely on medical intervention for our problems. And we've talked on past podcast episodes about ultra processed foods and addictive and harmful additives that Americans consume regularly that are banned in Europe. And I've talked about how living here for the past year, I've experienced that firsthand, and it's dramatically different. So I think Trump announcing that he would appoint RFK Jr. to a new federal panel on chronic disease if he wins the election is pretty awesome because he's been doing this for so long. His knowledge is incredibly expansive, and it's something that we desperately need to bring more attention to with this health crisis in our country. And I want to play a quick clip from Fox News on Sunday. They were doing an interview with RFK, and he kind of went into a little bit about his plans with the federal agencies.
You've talked about, or there's been discussion that if you were to join the Trump administration in some health related position, that you have real interest in dismantling things like the FDA, the CDC, NIH. You would like to see focus away from infectious diseases to what you're talking about, more chronic diseases. Is it fair to say that you would try to dismantle some of those organizations?
No, I wouldn't dismantle them. I would change the focus and I would end the corruption. I would, right now, 75% of FDA's budget is coming from pharmaceutical companies. That is a perverse incentive. In NIH, if you scientists and officials in NIH who work on drug development, who incubate drugs for the pharmaceutical company, get to collect lifetime royalties from those products. These are regulators. They're supposed to be looking for problems in those products. We have these agencies that have become sock puppets for the industries they're supposed to regulate. So they're not really interested in public health. Everybody, the most profitable thing today in America is a sick child. Everybody's making money. The hospitals are making money. The pharmaceutical companies are making money. Even the insurance companies make money. And we need to end those perverse incentives. We need to get the corruption out of FDA, out of NIH, out of the CDC, and make them function as they're supposed to function, which is to protect public health and particularly children's health.
I go back to your decision from Friday. Both you and Nicole Shanahan, your running mate, have talked about how you feel like the Democrats completely mistreated you, excluded you.
Sorry, I went into another part of the interview, but he's not wrong. I mean,
Yeah. So, well, one of the things, so he's talking about royalties, right? And I know we talked about this at one point a while back where like, I think it was a congressional hearing. They were looking into Fauci and they saw it, not just Fauci, but like every scientist that works for these agencies receives royalties, but they wouldn't say who it's from or how much it is. So just imagine, you know, the vaccine maker tells Fauci and his scientists, hey, we'll give you a percentage of every single sale. And then Fauci turns around and mandates it for like the whole public, every government agency. Like this
Right.
is how corruption spreads. And in case anyone doesn't know, RFK fucking hates Fauci. He wrote an entire book on him, which Tara, I think you and I should go read it and do an episode. The only reason I haven't read it yet is because I've heard excerpts from the book and it's absolutely disturbing what Fauci's done in his career, but I think we should read it and do an episode on it.
Oh.
So, I mean, if you don't like Fauci and you don't like what happened during COVID and lockdowns, what better person to be in charge of the health of this country than RFK? Because he absolutely, like, let him loose on Fauci, and there's no one that could do it better. Now, just to like get back to a positive note, because overall, like I feel really positive about this unity. And they have, you know how like MAGA, MAGA, well now MAHA, like MAHA is a trending hashtag. And what's so cool is it's not just people on the right, it's people on the left that are on this trend as well. And it stands for Make America Healthy Again. Trump's using it left and right, memes everywhere. And it's like, it doesn't matter where you stand politically. Everyone wants to be healthy. Everyone sees what's happened with our food system. And so, Tara, this is like another thing I wanted to bring up because I talked about how I think that they can win over some of the pro-Palestinian, like anti-war Democrats. Well, there's like a huge swath of Democrats that are like, kind of like old hippies, and they've been talking about this stuff for years. They don't like capitalism and big corporations. Well, here they're addressing these big corporations that are doing absolutely horrible, corrupt things. I think they could capture a lot of those voters as well.
that's why I don't understand the mentality of some of these Democrat voters, because that's exactly what it is. It's all big government, it's all big business. And I think you're totally right on this. And have you heard of Dr. Nicole Safier or Safier? I don't know how you say it, but she's like a health correspondent on Fox News. And she wrote a book called Make America Healthy Again. And then the subtitle is How Bad Behavior and Big Government Caused a $1 trillion crisis. And I don't know if she's associated with RFK Jr. at all, but she uses that hashtag Maha on her social platforms.
Yeah, her name sounds familiar. And that's the thing, like this is an issue that across the board, people have talked about. I mean, there's really nothing political about it. It's just you have, the Democrats that have basically decided to take money from these companies. And it's Republicans too. I will say, like we've talked many times about this uniparty establishment, and the biggest the biggest donor to political campaigns is actually from the food and drug, or not the food and drug, the food and beverage industry.
Not
It's not big
surprising.
pharma, it's not big oil, it's the food and beverage industry. And I used to say that when I worked for AstraZeneca and people would give me shit about working for big pharma. I was like, hey, if the food industry wasn't poisoning us, we wouldn't need pharmaceuticals. Like, why don't you start there? And I agree, like big pharma is a problem as well, but it's like go to the root of the issue, like Callie and Casey Means are talking about. And it's the food we're eating, it's the water we're drinking, it's all these toxins. So one of RFK's quotes that's gone viral, and I love it, is quote, "We have to love our children more than we hate each other." And it's this unifying quote of like, I don't care how much you hate Trump, hate Republicans, hate this, that, or the other. If you love your children and you want a healthier future that is free from war and censorship and corruption, then you need to stand together and join like our unity party. And I love it. As a mom, like this is the most hope I have had for my kids' future in the last 10 years. Like literally, I'm not over exaggerating. I have felt so on cloud nine because I'm like, oh my God, the shit that I worry about every fucking day as a mom, I feel like could actually be solved if they win. Not completely solved. I'm not like,
Yeah.
don't my head in the clouds,
Addressed.
but it's
It
the
could at
best
least be
chance we have.
addressed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I got to tell you, I'll send it to you, Tara, but there's this meme that's like gone viral, and it has RFK with his shirt off, which the guy is freaking ripped. Okay. He's got a six pack. He's 70. He has a six pack. He's like tan, and like we've seen all the videos of him, working out and flipping off of boats and all kinds of stuff. So there's that next to a picture of a Rachel Levine, who's Biden's Secretary of Health, who's that like overweight transgender woman or whatever. And everyone's like, and the meme is like, which one do you want running the health of this country? Like, obviously, the guy with a six pack.
Exactly. Like he looks amazing for being 70. And remember last year when that video of him doing push-ups went viral and like the haters were criticizing his technique and talking shit, but like the dude is ripped and it's clear he practices what he preaches when it comes to health and fitness. And it's pretty damn sexy and motivating, right? And if I had no idea who he was or what his background was, and I knew nothing about Rachel Levine, and I saw pictures of both of them side by side, and you asked me who I'd be more inclined to take health advice from, it sure as fuck wouldn't be Mr. Levine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the other thing I'll point out is he's just a likable guy. Like unlike Kamala, like he is just magnetic. He's like a good person. And Trump really talked about that. He's like, I've known him, the whole family for years, and he's just a good person. So, yeah, like the other thing is we've talked so much about all those episodes we did, like making our own toothpaste, because like we found out fluoride is a neurotoxin and all that kind of stuff. And I had felt very run down from just us researching all these things because it felt like this is too big of an issue to tackle because nobody seems to care. And I feel completely different now. Like I feel so energized. I feel like this problem is going to be front and center now, and it's actually going to be solved. Like I feel like it woke up so many Americans that maybe didn't realize what was going on. Everyone's talking about it now. If you're anywhere on social media, it's being talked
Okay,
about.
that's what I was gonna say because I think you're seeing a lot more on social media because you're not seeing shit about this on the MSM. And if you
Right.
go and look up RFK right now on mainstream media, you're not gonna find anything except vague references to how he dropped out of the race. And like
Yeah.
maybe a couple articles about is this gonna help or hurt Trump, but like nothing about the American public's reaction. So I love that, I can get it from you on your end, everything you're seeing on social media, because it's like you said, your dad didn't even know who the fuck he is. And
Mhm.
like, nobody on watching mainstream even knows what's going on.
And I think it's actually gonna hurt the media because it's very clearly showing, just like my mom, it's like she was shocked. Like her and I talk about this, but she was truly shocked that this was cut off the way that it was because it's just highlighting they're actively censoring somebody that they should be talking about. And so for me and for everybody listening, that should make you want to look on social media more so than watching the news because things aren't going to be cherry picked. You're going to get it all. I get stuff from every angle, the left and the right on social media. It's all there. And you just see a tiny little sliver of that on the mainstream media and they spin it to fit their narrative. And I'll just, say one other thing. You had played that clip from Fox News and he said he is going to be actively campaigning with Trump and more Democrats are going to be coming forward to endorse him. So could that just mean Tulsi Gabbard? Probably. Could there be more? Maybe. Like there might be more and more people coming forward that want to support this unity party. So I'm really optimistic.
Yeah, I totally love your optimism on this. And I did see that. And I want to know who these Democrats are going to be. Because the only other thing that I've been seeing, at least on the MSM, is how upset his family is with him and like how his family is speaking out. And it's just really sad. And like, I was reading how even like his wife is not comfortable with this decision that he's made to basically, go against the Democrat Party, but he's standing by his beliefs. And I fucking love that. And I want to play one more quick clip from Fox News. And I hope I have it at the right point in the clip.
Interests of the pharmaceutical companies and the processed food industry.
This decision is not without personal cost for you. Your own family went to the White House on St. Patrick's Day, took a huge picture with President Biden, made clear who they were supporting. Friday night, your siblings issued this statement. We believe in Harrison Waltz. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. You posted on X Friday night saying you're grateful to your amazing wife because the decision that you've made is one that she's uncomfortable with. So talk to us about the personal backlash you have to deal with and moving
Yeah,
forward.
I mean, my family is at the center of the Democratic Party. I have 5 members of my family that are working for the Biden administration. President Biden has a bust of my father behind him at the Oval Office. He's been a family friend for many, many years. And my family I understand that they're troubled by my decisions, but, I love my family. I feel like we were raised in a milieu where we were encouraged to debate each other and debate ferociously and passionately about things, but to still love each other. So, they can, they're free to take their positions on these issues. There are many, many members of my family who are working in my campaign, who are supporting me. I have a very big family. There's a few of them that are troubled. But, I think we all need to be able to disagree with each other and still love each other.
Wall Street Journal has that.
And I love that
Good
message.
message.
Yeah, exactly.
See, he's just a good guy. And I do want to point out that I saw the letter. It was like maybe 5 of the Kennedys that spoke out against him. But like he said, there's 5 of them working right now for the Biden administration. And a while back, we did that episode on California and all the corruption. And I don't remember what the nonprofit was, but his sister was like the head of it. So it's like if they've got their money and their career and tied up with it, like, yeah, they're going to have to go with Democrats. But at the end of the day, it's about your values. And he's sticking to his values. The Democrat Party is the one that steered away from that. And so I love that he has this positive message about love and unity, no matter how nasty anyone is to him. And they've been nasty. He is like, he's a good guy. Like he's not going to lash out and talk bad about them. He's just going to stay focused on what he thinks is best for the good of this country. And you have to respect that. I mean, that's how many politicians do that,
Yeah, that's why I found this speech overall so impressive because like I said earlier, I thought it was eloquent. Like it was
Yeah.
just he wasn't hardcore bashing anybody. He was just telling it like it is, and just the most matter of fact and respectful way.
Yeah, 100%. I am so excited we started out the week on such a positive note. Like, I mean, this is great. This is good. This is like the best news we've had in a long time. And you can feel the energy. Everyone's into it. People love it. Yeah, there's some people that hate it, but for the most part, like this is something really positive that's happening. So I'm like I said, more optimistic than I have been in a while. I'm gonna leave everybody with one ask, and that is go watch the full interview of RFK Jr. and then go listen to the full interview of Tucker Carlson where he has Callie and Casey Means on, and then send it to one other person. Just start spreading the word because there's so many people out there that are like my dad that don't go on social media, they don't listen to podcasts, they literally have no idea this information's out there and it's not divisive. Both of those interviews are very optimistic and very fact-based. So just share it with one other person and just start opening people's eyes because this is something that I think we can all come together on regardless of what political aisle we're in. So thanks everyone for tuning in and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.